Yeah, okay, cool. So welcome everyone to the April Plant Forum. I'm Emma Simpkins, formerly Emma Bodley. Since the last forum I got married, so sorry for the confusion about my name. I'm still getting used to it myself. We have a really exciting lineup today. So we've got 3 speakers and a little update on Botanic Gardens Day and the Plant Challenge for the month of May. So just usual housekeeping, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. We are recording, so if you don't want to be seen, feel free to turn off your camera. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Martin Weaver, who's the curator at Eastwoodhill. So that's on the east coast of the North Island of New Zealand. So I'll hand over to you, Martin.
Great stuff. Thanks, Emma. Good afternoon, everybody. And kia ora to all our BCARM friends and BCARM friends here. It's great to be able to start this off. 15 minutes isn't enough for us, really, but I'll share my screen and we'll go through just a very little brief history to the Arboretum, because it's quite an interesting story. And we will get on to our critically endangered forestry project in a little bit. But the National Arboretum here at New Zealand, Te Mararakanui o Aotearoa, celebrates its 112th year this year. It's a collection of trees that is essentially from one man's collection, William Douglas Cook. Cook was quite an avid collector of trees, brought on by essentially his post-traumatic stress or shell shock from the First World War, and there was a lot of influence of that on his collecting. So it's a very haphazard collection currently. The stories and the serendipitous nature of this collection is really a very interesting story, but we won't have the time to go into that into too much detail today. But to cut a very long story short, he died pretty much alone, and just before his death, he gifted, he made a transaction for the Arboretum to be sold to another local businessman here in Gisborne on the East Cape of the North Island by the name of H.B. Williams. And the Williams family are quite a philanthropic bunch, and they're still very active in that philanthropy today. So Bill bought it, H.B. Williams bought it from Cook, and to cut another very long story short, roughly 10 years later in 1975, the Eastwoodhill Trust Act was formed as a private member's bill, and essentially Bill Williams gifted the Arboretum not only to New Zealand, Aotearoa, but also to the remainder of the world as an Arboretum. And it's a collection which has always been short of money. It's a collection that is still short of money. We don't receive any direct government funding at this stage, or indeed local authority funding. So we have, and the boards of trustees that manage the Arboretum over that sort of 50-year period now, have done all they can to try and get people through the gate. We do have to pay to get into our Arboretum, and that does drive us a lot of money, but the funding is obviously a big drive for us. I joined roughly 3 years ago, and we were very lucky to be able to take on quite a significant document that was put in place back in 2010, which is the Eastwoodhill Master Plan. It's a 100-year plan for Eastwoodhill that was the brainchild of Thomas Waltz from Nelson Bird Waltz Architects over in the States. Another serendipitous story of how they got here, but essentially he was able to help us to move forward. And the 100-year plan is essentially a way of presenting and curating the Arboretum in a very different space, in a very different as it is currently. The collection is just over 15,000 trees in total. Specimen, we've got over 150 different families and just over 2,300 species of trees, some climbers, shrubs, which are our main focus, obviously being an Arboretum. And when I got here, the database that we had was pretty ropey, to be perfectly honest. So we're in the process of just double checking what we've got and what condition it's in, with an arboretum that's over 100 years old now, in many aspects, we've got a lot of trees that need a lot of work doing to them. And the master plan helps guide us in how we're going to present that into the future. So of those 2,300 species, we've got just over 100 specimens that are either extinct in the wild, critically endangered, or endangered via the IUCN Red List. And it's going through those species and trying to work them into our master plan, which is a really interesting project. So essentially, the Arboretum was never formally curated to as Arboreta are laid out, either via genus or via natural distribution throughout, from where they represent. So trees from Asia or trees from North America and so forth. So when people get here, the actual experience isn't as brilliant as it could be. Unless you're a bit of a tree nerd, you don't get too much out of coming to visit us because there's a lot of a mishmash. There's literally no order. So the 100-year master plan looks to place order, and essentially what it does is it creates a space for each of the 81 individual countries from all 6 continents of trees that we represent. And that is placed out via the eco regions, which is laid out via the WWF eco regions from around the world. So hopefully you're seeing this map area. So this is available via our website. This is open source, so people can come in and have a look. And this essentially shows us where our trees are represented from and where they will be into the future. So currently this is, the trees aren't in these places, but we have this huge jigsaw puzzle to propagate them all on and then plant them into the right space. So just to give you a brief overview of where we sit out on the East Cape, if we zoom out, that's about as far as we can go. I know, so as we zoom out, you can see that we're a really isolated collection. There's no large conurbation here until you get down to Gisborne, which is over here. Just to give you another brief sort of understanding of where we sit, is that we are a really isolated collection. So as we zoom in, you can see essentially where we're going to be moving our eco, we call them eco zones to start with, which is a larger sort of continent-based or continents of the world. And as we zoom in, you will start to see a number of different eco regions, as we're calling them. And these do reflect the World Wildlife Fund's regions. So you can see that in Europe, we can have areas where we are focusing on the Western European broadleaf forests, the Caucasian mixed forests, Celtic broadleaves, and so on and so forth. And as we come around to North America, you can see, and then the Arctic region, you can see that we represent trees from the Sierra Nevada and Colorado Rockies, and so on and so forth. The master plan also highlights a number of different capital projects that we're doing. The big line you can see here is the link road, which gets us around the Arboretum, and you can see there's things like new staff facilities. This isn't in place currently, but just capital projects. Essentially what we've got here are another opportunity for potential biosecurity and phytosanitary facilities should we need them. So as a brief introduction, that's where we sit. That's what we're trying to do. We've got a huge task of trying to do that. But as I realise that we're a way into it already, we'll get on to the plants that we're really trying to focus on. So the master plan itself is not too prescriptive. We can move this around. We've got free license to change if, for instance, we wanted to put in a new eco region here, for instance, that we have maybe a connection with a new source of trees that we don't currently have, then we have the ability to do that. And just to give you some type of understanding of what we have in this, essentially about 10 hectares of a part of the Arboretum here is where the thought process came through of the critically endangered forest project. So whilst we were going through focusing on the IUCN critically endangered trees that we had, and then cross-referencing those with the how available they are through ex situ collections via the BCARM, there were 2 standout species that would grow very easily, as we've got some really good seed source from one of them, and another one which we just thought would be really interesting to grow on. So the 2 species that we are really focusing on is, as we zoom in there, is the Widringtonia whitei and the Araucaria angustifolia. Via the IUCN, you can see that the Widringtonia is a very endangered, critically endangered species. It sits just in the south of Malawi there. As you can see, there's less than 49 mature individuals back in that environment. And they have had some really great successes. Actually, the BGCI have been involved with repatriating a lot of seed back to Malawi that have been planted back out on the Mulanje Mountain. So they've done a great job with links with the Bedgebury Pineatum in Kent in England. And here at the Arboretum, we've got one mature specimen which was planted in the 1930s, and that's producing quite a lot of seed, which is great. And that'll then form our part of our propagation plan to pop them into this area here. And it's a very interesting tree. The reasons why it has extensively failed in Malawi is that it burns extremely hot. I can attest, if you put it onto a fire, it goes absolutely crazy. So it is, it's heavily used for industry, but obviously poor management has left that to be pretty limited. At the time, the BGCI found that it was only in 3 ex situ locations. That may have changed recently, but just goes to show that not only is it endangered in its natural environment, and it's not widely found through ex situ projects around the world. So one of the key principles of the critically endangered forest project was that the seed must be readily available here, and we're ultimately creating a living seed bank, and indeed the potential for some of this timber to be utilised again into the future. It's a little bit of a folly, to be perfectly honest, with what we're trying to achieve, but we think that as a way of extending the seed capabilities for these 2 particular trees is really interesting. So again, those of you who aren't aware of the Araucaria angustifolia, it's the piranha pine originally from South America. The population trend is unknown via the IUCN, and that's somewhat of a concern. They grow so well in our environments. We've got probably 3 mature trees, 2 females and 1 male, and they produced really these beautiful big seed pods, which we can get roughly about 200 seeds per pod, and we have no problem in germinating them on. So that was really key for us to be able to say, well, look, what does grow easier, and what can we do something that's a little bit different? And that is where and why the Araucaria angustifolia is going to be coming in here. We have an offshoot of the New Zealand Farm Foresters Association here, and you can just see that they're doing a trial plot on oaks for production purposes, so hence why that square is there. But the other areas that we are going to be focusing on as well is to create that seed bank again are for Fraxinus, and obviously the problems that they're facing over in North America at the moment with the emerald ash borer. We have got 4 of the 5 critically endangered species of the Fraxinus here, and again they are seeding very well, and we can get abundance of them. So again, just looking to create a seed bank source into the future. The other species that you will be able to see there is Onus Henry Eye. Now, this is somewhat of an unknown. The Onus Henry Eye is deemed to be extinct in the wild, and again, only found in 3 locations ex situ. We believe that our variety of, we only have 1 tree here, and we're pretty sure that it's Onus Henry Eye, but it also gets quite commonly misidentified with Onus formosa. So we've done our best to try and just to confirm that it is Onus Henry Eye, but we're just in the process of trying to get that a little bit more detail on that. But then another great example of just providing a space. So to put that into context, before you can see it here actually on the aerial underneath these layers. The area here was used as a commercial forest before, Pinus radiata, and that was planted out post Cyclone Bola, which was 1986, way before my time here. But it was there to plant out and to stop this bank from falling. So that was harvested about 4 years ago, And so we've got this essentially bare land now. So it was a blank canvas. We needed to do something with it. We have put 6 hectares back of what was there originally to help us generate some funds into the future. But we thought there was too much of a great opportunity to do something a little bit different with these critically endangered species. And so we decided to create the Critically Endangered Forest Project and see how it goes. So there's lots of planting to do this year. Our area, we've got, I'd say, probably around about 500 or 600 plants that need to go out into the ground, and they're ready to go. So we'll start that with those. The Widringtonia, we've just been able to get some good seed off of that, so that'll be at the very start of that process. So the long-term aim is to keep this going year on year for the next 4 or 5 years until we've got the whole area planted out. We're a very unique space. We've got a very incredible sort of varied history, and it's been a really interesting project for me for the last 3 years. We're in a big process of trying to get some more funding. So back on the website, the biggest thing that we can ask is just for people to get involved. There's lots of opportunities here, whether it be with a more commercial basis, which you guys obviously aren't going to be overly interested in, but just tell somebody we've got heaps of opportunities here when it comes to research opportunities. Why we've got such a variety of trees, and there's a huge opportunity should anybody want to come over and do some research on them. So we've also got a bit of a YouTube channel where there's a little bit more information in a little bit more of a video format. So go and check that out. All the history's there and on the website. So hope that's been of interest to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. That was really interesting. There were certainly things in that I didn't know about Eastwoodhill. So we have time for some questions. If anyone has anything, feel free to raise your hand with the icon and I'll get to you. I don't think we have any questions in the chat yet. One thing I was interested in, Martin, was around like the type of provenance information that you have for some of these species. Do you think much of your collection has provenance? Or are you working on that?
Yeah, our database is pretty strong. We have where we have it. We definitely have it, if that makes sense. There are still a lot of question marks there. Cook's planting original trees were sent over from majority from the UK, from Hilliers. We had a huge connection with Hilliers and Slocums. So those provenances do go back to the UK with majority. But we know that he also got quite savvy with his trading routes. There was a long trip. He didn't know what to do with regards to propagation of seed, so they literally came bare root stock on a boat. And so they would go the long route as well. So they'd go to South Africa, they'd go to India, China, Australia, and then eventually end up here. And he was adding to his consignment the whole time. So that's where a lot of our trees do represent from the Arboretum. So we've got a strong South African contingent of species, and some Indian and some Chinese and some Asian. So that's essentially how the collection has developed.
Is your collection publicly available for searchable for like researchers and that, or is it best to get in touch with you?
No, all that information is available online now, along with the master plan. They just need to send us an email and we'll ping you a link back to the master plan if anybody wants to have a look at it. It's more than open source. I'm very much of the opinion that it needs to be out there, because the more it's out there, more people get interested. And if anybody does have any real data collection issues, then Dan Taylor, our assistant curator, is the man to speak to, because he's doing some great work at the moment with trying to manipulate our data into far more usable for the master plan regions purposes. And we know what we've got and potentially where they're from, but what don't we have, and how could we potentially add to our collection is something that we're kind of dipping our toe into at the moment. But it's a big job.
Yeah, and Dylan from Dunedin has asked about your seed collecting from your own trees. So obviously the genetics is going to be quite small, and you did touch on how you're trying to source mainly from in New Zealand, but are you looking at getting seed from other sources to kind of diversify those collections?
Yeah, absolutely. If we can, we want to have those conversations. We're working this year primarily on our native section as well. So we've got quite an extensive native selection here, and we want to advance that. So we'll be in touch with many different organisations. So because we obviously want to have those the rare and endangered trees of Aotearoa as much as we do from the 80 other countries that we represent.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Martin. And obviously, if you've got any other questions for Martin throughout the forum, feel free to drop him a line in the chat. I'm going to hand over next to Clare Shearman. She works at the Wellington Botanic Gardens and she's the plant collections team manager. So over to you, Clare.
Thank you, and kia ora everybody, and thanks for having me. So I'm Wellington Botanic Garden, but I look after 3 of the areas there, which is Wellington Botanic Garden, which you probably all know of, the Bolton Street Cemetery, which houses our Heritage Roads collection, and that kind of takes on to the side of Wellington Botanic Garden, and sort of as you meander through to the city, that's where you'll walk through. And also King Park, which is over towards the zoo on the other side of town. So I look after those 3 areas there, and the team beside them. So let me just share. I was going to talk to you guys today on some of our sculpture installs that we've been having, and popped in the bedding area. Now, bedding is quite a controversial issue, as we do have a lot of it in our garden, but it's being the quite historic garden, it's been there for a very long time. It's one of the areas that would be useful for us to keep, but thinking of ways in which we can utilize it for better use other than just ornamental bedding. So can you see my screen now? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So what we decided to do is, many of you might have known that we do have an annual event called Gardens Magic, and it's a series of free concerts that are held in the gardens, and that is usually at the sound shell in this lower area that you can see on your screen there. And it's a lighting display around the Botanic Gardens in the main garden area during the summer. It's an iconic annual event, and it's attended by thousands of people over 3 weeks in the summer. And it enhances the gardens with its sort of natural environment with lights and music. So there's music entertainment that goes on in the sound shell, and as you can see there, the lighting that goes with that. And so back in 2018, the seed was planted really out of a conversation that I had with one of the event's producers. So we team with the Wellington City Council events team to hold this event, and so effectively we're like a venue really for this event. So it works really well for us because we team with those guys, and they help us with the lighting and choose the trees and also install various quirky arts in the way of lighting for these events. And so the creative producer and myself had a bit of a discussion about how we could enhance the displays a little bit more, and then we decided that we could, because the producer at the time is very into the arts idea of the arts city. So I then decided that it would be great to actually have more of a permanent display for the Gardens Magic experience. So I started to explore an outdoor gallery space, and along the lines of the waterfront plinths. If any of you have been to Te Papa, this is what they are back on my screen there. And so at Te Papa, these massive plinths with artwork, and they change out every couple of years. So my inspiration was behind these artworks and thinking that actually we could utilize our spaces for something like that in the bedding displays to enhance Gardens Magic and also the gardens. So we could launch this perhaps as an annual event and change out the works every couple of years, or however, depending on the artist's uptake. So that's kind of the idea behind it. And so what we've achieved so far is, after approaching various art groups and sculpture trusts with no real traction, unfortunately, from my part, I then went to approach local artists personally, and getting really good connections with local artists myself. And just working directly with the artists, I found 2 really keen bronze artists to jump on board for my first session that we had. And then I secured the Wellington City Council resource to install some plinths for the artwork and arrange all the necessary paperwork, etc., that you'd imagine that goes behind all of this stuff. And then together with the events team, we planned out how we might highlight the flower beds, how I might design the planting to enhance the artwork, and yeah, and basically sort of really enhance and boost up that display for a launch. So my first partnership was with Jonathan Campbell and Campbell Maud, funnily enough, Campbell and Campbell, and who basically brought these fantastic bronze works to the gardens. And they also were really great artists for sort of a first intake, because they really understood the space. We worked really well together, and they thought about their artwork to relate to the gardens, which is really amazing. So it was really great to have those guys on board. So as you can see there, we've got a few interesting installments there for the first launch. State House was a bronze cast lawnmower, and we decided to sit this into a circle of lawn in amongst the bedding plants, and then we mowed a sort of section for it as if the mower had gone in and just stopped, which was pretty fun. And the team, or my team, really enjoyed sort of that sort of creative aspect of creating something a little bit different. So that was kind of perfect for the display there. We also had a South Pacific system, which you can see there was a huge bronze sculpture, and it just sat perfectly, and with the aspect of weather, which is obviously a daily sort of conversation with everybody. So that was quite fun. And if any of you know that we do actually have the Met service at Kelburn that sits right in the gardens as well. So that was also quite interesting to have something along those lines. And then we had Water Source, which is the water urn that you see there. And it had really cool bronze frogs kind of just sitting on the side of it. So that was really lovely as well, and a bit more delicate. And this is what they kind of look like at night, and with the working in partnership with the lighting artists, we managed to, you know, provide some great sort of art lighting with the sculptures as well. Oops. Oh, that didn't change. Why didn't that change? There we go. And so in 2020, if you can imagine with the bedding that you know, there's not only one installment of bedding design, there's 2. You've got your summer bedding, and then your tulip displays that is another big event that we hold in the gardens. So in 2020, this was the sculpture placements with, again, another design around planting to enhance the sculpture. And again, we really wanted to, you know, up our game on the plant designs really, and complement the work that we've managed to secure. So it was quite lovely to think about plants enhancing the artwork as well. And just another photo of the next summer display. So these were installed for 2 years because COVID kind of got in the way, really. So these were a 2-year placement. And then you can just see how it changes in time and then in different displays of what happened there. And then 2021 tulips. And then last year, I managed to partner with 2 other artists, Johnny Turner and Jason Heener. And these were installed for the launch this summer gone. And these again were, I was managing to secure something slightly different. This was all stone-based art, which was just really wonderful to have something that was bronze work. And then we moved into this summer of having something which was all stoneware and all New Zealand stone. So these ones, we've got a New Dawn, which was a piece of New Zealand marble, and that was recycled from a demolished house in Wellington. And then the artist Johnny Turner, that one was basically looking at the form and the formation of the stone from New Zealand, and he was looking at the skyward energy of spring and summer, and that's what that sort of kind of cone shape was like. And then the Gara that we used really worked really well with this garden. You can see it behind me too. Expanding Universe. This was a huge piece of West Coast New Zealand granite, and that's the one that's behind me here, and in the photo that you see there as well. And this was a form representing the forces that create stone. And then what we wanted to do with the bedding planting was to kind of create a look of a low-lying sort of riverbed, I guess, using the alyssum. And so it's a pink alyssum and a purple alyssum, as you can see, sort of creating this kind of riverbed look. And that sort of wended its way through there. So that's kind of how we worked with that piece of sculpture there. And then we've got the Tiki, and this was, resembled a stylized clam with the Tiki coming out, which represents life. And again, the Gara was a great choice for us to enhance these sculptures. So we kind of look forward to the next installments, and it's really helped us look at plant design, I think, with the whole team, and looking at bedding slightly differently, where we can actually feel inspired and creative, whereas a lot of our collections, as we know, are quite static. Whereas this is a fantastic opportunity to really create some really neat designs. And we, it only lasts 6 months, so we can be really creative and not really have too much stress about whether it's going to work or not. And it's a really good feeling, I think, for us and the team to kind of look forward to quite an undertaking as usual. It does create, it really is a whole 17 of us down there planting and ripping out and replanting, but it's really inspired us all to really go out there and try something new. And it's a really good, I think, for collections, for myself, which is, as we all know, collection is, about sort of looking at the past but moving to the future. And I think this is a really good example of how we can take on something a bit more modern and new, and have a bit of fun really with plants. So yeah, we look forward to the next time and the next installments really. So it's been quite a fun project.
Awesome, thanks Claire, that was great. And I love that that transition over the last couple of years. You've moved to incorporate more perennials in your bedding. I think that's a fantastic solution to kind of reducing some of the work that you have to do, number of plants being used. And Gara is always just such a showstopper.
It is. It's been a tremendous, everybody's just loved this one. They're going to kind of sort of saying to us, well, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? How are you going to beat this one? It's just, it's been quite interesting. Everybody's just loved it. And it is really exciting for us to have that feedback as well from the general public.
Absolutely.
So, thanks.
Are there any questions from the audience for Claire? feel free to raise your hand or write something in the chat. Or if you've got a comment, because I know incorporating sculpture or art is such a common thing in Botanic Gardens. It really, we do it to, as Claire said, like highlight our collections and add value and add stories, but not at the expense of our collections. I think that's really that fine line and balance, and what you've done at Wellington really highlights that's achievable.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to share their experience, feel free to sing out. I don't see anyone waving at me, so thank you again, Claire. So I'm going to hand over to our final speaker, which is Sheree Parker from Geelong Botanic Gardens. Sheree's a horticulturalist there, so Sheree, over to you.
Hi, how you going? I'm Sheree, as Emma said. With the sculpture, they were amazing with the plants, and we've got a couple of sculptures in our garden. But I think, yeah, that highlighting them and making them work within that landscape, yeah, it can really show them off, I suppose, as well as the plants and the sculpture. So yeah, it was really beautiful. So I'll share my screen. It's just loading, I think. It's been slow.
Right.
Yep, all good. Sorry if it's a bit noisy in the background. We're mowing outside today, so you might hear the mower coming in and out. So yeah, I work as a horticulturalist here at the Geelong Botanic Gardens, and I'm actually just filling in for Jenny Patrick, a colleague of mine. She was going to do this little segment. So I'm still sort of keeping with her plant choice, the Brownonia, just because, yeah, I thought it was kind of fitting because I used to live in North Queensland and I moved down about 5 years ago. So the plants are just, yeah, totally different landscape. So I had to sort of learn, I suppose, and still learn a lot of the natives down here. And this was kind of one of the first ones that I kept annoying Jenny about because I could never remember the name. Yeah, I used to work with Jenny, the 21st garden here. So yeah, she was great with her natives and really inspiring to get out there and kind of learn some new plants. So just, yeah, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the lands that I'm on today, which is the Wadawurrung, the traditional custodians of the land here at Geelong Botanic Gardens, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and their emerging leaders. And sorry about my voice, I've had a mask on for the last 3 days. I've been at uni and finally in Victoria we were allowed not to wear them, but yeah, it's awful. So the plant is Brownonia australis. It's blue pin cushion flower is its common name, and it's found pretty much all over Australia. It's endemic to Australia, and yeah, I think it's pretty amazing how adaptive it is just to grow all over, which is pretty incredible because it's kind of a small plant. And it grows in such a diverse range of conditions. So from grasslands, woodlands, some desert sort of type environments, and even sort of down to sort of sandy dunes. So it's done really well to colonise lots of different areas, I suppose. In our region here in Geelong and the Bellarine, I've kind of seen it growing in fragments of grasslands of the Victorian volcanic plains, which is an endangered ecological community down this way, and also around Anglesey, so around in the woodlands and stuff. You can sort of see it. It's so bright when you're walking around. It's one of those ones that kind of just stands out, and yeah, it's a really good one to try and find. Here in the gardens, we've got only a few sort of growing in our 21st garden, so in the Anglesey bed and out in the red gum bed out sort of in our front entrance area. So they are a perennial herb, and they flower mainly in Victoria from spring and sort of summer. But I sort of read that in other states, I think they have different flowering months. So they flower for a little bit longer or a bit shorter, depending on where they are. The family they belong to is Goodnaceae, and the characteristic of this family is the Indusium, which I hope I pronounced that right. Pollen cup surrounding the stigma, and I think that is why the Brownonia was moved into that family, because I think it was in sort of a family on its own. It is a monotypic genus, so there's only one single species, but when I was kind of looking up some information on it, they have had other species that have been described, but none of them have been accepted so far. So that was kind of interesting. So yeah, the Brownonia has beautiful blue flowers. They're really sort of just that different sort of different blue, I suppose. So yeah, it does really stand out. And I know that's sort of one reason why Jenny really loves this plant as well, just because they are that unusual blue. So the flowers are held on upright stems, roughly about 30 centimetres. So they do stand quite tall in amongst the grasses and the understory. And yeah, they flower sort of October to January. But yeah, they can go through to autumn, and I think as our seasons are sort of changing a bit, we'll probably notice, that they're sort of staying up a little bit longer than they used to. So the common name, the pin cushion, refers to the inflorescence, which looks like a blue pin cushion with yellow-headed pins stuck into it, which sort of does. They insect pollinated by beetles, flies, and some native bee species. So quite a few, and also a great nectar for the butterflies as well. So I've been told we're trying to establish, I suppose, a bit more of a population of them here in the gardens, and speaking to a couple of the sort of community nurseries and stuff. Can be a bit hard to establish a larger population of them. So a lot of people kind of just treat them as annuals and just will reseed each year. And we're sort of hoping maybe if with the small plants that we've got, we'll collect as much seed as we can, and then hopefully do sort of a bit more of a mass display, I suppose, somewhere in the 21st, so we can really sort of highlight the colour that they show off. I haven't had a chance to sow any of the seed yet, but apparently they're quite easy to grow. They germinate really readily, and you can, I think, with a bit of smoke water treatment seems to be the go to get a more even germination. And so that's kind of about it. So yeah, it's a great little native plant. I mean, it's only really small, and it's just like a small rosette of leaves. You have just these one spike or a couple of spikes that sort of stick up with that brilliant blue flower. So yeah, that's about it. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sheree. That was great. I love when people talk about blue flowers because they're just not very common in New Zealand. I'm always kind of drawn to that kind of eye-catching blue, so I can see why that would be at the entrance of your garden. And just a little plug for Begans Congress, maybe there'll be some in flower still in September. And if anyone goes on the Geelong trip, they might see it there. So thanks, Sheree. Does anyone have any questions or comments about Sheree's plant and Jenny's plant? Anyone else got this in their garden? I don't think we have it in New Zealand. I haven't seen it. John Bentley? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm right.
You are.
Things kept going over the little box. I couldn't do it. Thanks for that, Sheree. That's a wonderful Victorian volcanic plains plant, and I'm from the Wellington Botanic Garden. That is one day hoping to be part of the BCARM's Care for the Rare program, with specialising in Victorian volcanic plants. The best place I've seen those pin cushions growing naturally is at a remnant grassland in Sunbury, Evans Street. I don't know if you've been there. And they only grow on a little, there's a little rise, if you could imagine it, running across this 4-hectare site, and that's the only place they will come. But in the sunlight, this little ridge, and it's only like a metre high, looks spectacular. So they are a wonderful plant, and worthwhile even trying to grow and get out there for people to plant in gardens if that's possible. So I don't know whether you're doing any work on potential for the nursery and garden industry on that particular plant.
For us at Geelong. No, I mean, it would be a good one for the friends to maybe have growing in their nursery once we get sort of some populations up, and I suppose it's a bit more eye-catching for the public when they come in. But yeah, I think it would be a good one to represent. We have a small sort of grasslands bed as well that we sort of represent a few of the volcanic plains, and I'm kind of lucky my sister is with Greening Australia, so I get to go out on field trips with her and she looks after the grasslands. So yeah, you get to see some pretty amazing sites with colour, and it is amazing. It's like a subtle sort of landscape down here where everything's like a little bit smaller, but it's yeah, it's still so pretty.
Lots of people want to try and grow that Himalayan blue poppy, and I think that'd be a really good alternative, especially for Victorian gardens. And if it's, you know, it's around Australia, so it must be something that's really worthwhile promoting, even if it's sold as an annual somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So thanks for that.
Yep. Thanks.
Great chat. I'm envious of it, that's for sure. I think that would be great as a little addition to kind of a perennial border or something like that. So I'm just gonna last little bit of the session before we finish off is I just want to talk about Botanic Gardens Day, which is on the 29th of May. So hopefully that's in everyone's calendars. And the theme this year is plant passions. So traditionally for Botanic Gardens Day, BCARM has put on something on the 29th. So that might have been like a plant panel or various forums. But this year, we are working on something slightly different. So it's our 7th year celebrating Botanic Gardens Day, and we've partnered with CSOL for the next 2 years, who are going to be supporting the Plant Challenge and offering really exciting prize packs to people who participate and share their plant stories. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we will have a series of webinars every Thursday at 7 p.m. AEST, so at 9 p.m. New Zealand time. And that's going to be hosted by Costa. So they're going to be some very exciting speakers. So pop those in your diary as well and share them with your friends and family. We're also going to be hosting a BCARM professional development session which is in partnership with the ANPC. So that will be on the 12th of May. So that will be kind of the early morning for you in Australia and kind of early afternoon for us in New Zealand. And that will have a real focus on kind of germplasm and ex situ conservation. Costa's also going to be doing some live streaming from Cairns on the 29th of May, as well as there'll be a Melbourne radio live stream with some of our favourite BG experts. These are the forums that will be running throughout the month of May. So have a look at those, some really exciting speakers. We've got someone from Hatchling Studio, Ray Dean from Wellington, Matt Coulter and Greg Burke will be a really great one. I won't plug too much my own one with Andre from
Emma, we can't see the slides.
Oh no, we've stopped sharing.
Just the first one.
Some technical difficulties. I might just stop sharing my screen anyway. So we will have, these will all be sent out in the regular kind of e-newsletters if you haven't seen them already through BCARM's. The plant challenge, of course, is running again, so that will be using the hashtag Plant Lovers Challenge. And we want to see as many of you participating as possible, sharing your plant stories either through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we'll share them through our BCARM's channels. So keep an eye out. There's some little like comms packs going out through the e-news for staff, and then some targeting volunteer groups, friends groups. So keep an eye out if you haven't seen those, and get in touch with us if you want to know more. So next month, the Plant Forum will be in the slightly different format to celebrate Botanic Gardens Day or Botanic Gardens Month. So again, that's on the 12th of May. All those details are being sent out in the newsletters, so it won't be in this particular format, but it'll be well worth attending if you can, or at least for a portion of that session. So if anyone has anything they'd like to share, comments, questions. John, I think maybe your hand's up from before, but sing out if it's not. Other than that, we might wrap up, and I look forward to seeing you all on the 12th of May. Get in touch if you want to follow up on anything from this session, but thanks again to all our speakers, and thank you all for joining. See you next time.